Hi, welcome to Culturally Determined. I'm your host, Aryeh Cohen-Wade, and my guest today is Sophie Zucker. Sophie, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sophie Zucker, and I am a comedian.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. Okay, you have a new show, and it's a one-woman
hmm
show. And, well, what is it called, and how would you describe the show?
It's called Sophie Sucks Face, and what I tell people is that it's a show about a girl who hooks up with her cousin. Because I was always taught that log lines are supposed to be short, so
Okay, so I wasn't sure if that was a twist that that was we couldn't
I think
reveal.
it's a fun twist, but it's also a fun hook. So I've just started saying it, you know.
Okay, that makes sense. So I saw the show last week at Soho Playhouse. Is that the name of the theater? Um,
hmm Yep.
Enjoyed it a lot. It's very funny. You sing, you dance, you portray multiple characters. There's audience interaction. Can you talk a little bit about your background in general and like have you always wanted to be a comedian and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I unsurprisingly have a background in musical theater, because that's what I did a lot just like growing up because I think when you want to do theater and you're a kid, that's like what's available to you.
Hmm.
Um, but I always loved to write and I always loved to make stuff. And then I got to college and I sort of like started doing improv like on a whim, tried out for an improv group, got in, and then I was like, oh, I think I wanted to do comedy this whole time because I was always like, counting laughs, I guess, when I was on stage in anyone else's production, even if it was really serious, even if I was like, Sally Bowles in Cabaret. I'm like, but did they laugh at the part they were supposed to laugh at? Um, so then I did a lot of comedy in college, took some time off, went to Chicago, did some comedy there, went back to college, graduated on time. Thank God. My parents were happy about that. And then moved to New York to do comedy and was just like, yeah, performing and writing my own stuff. I trained a lot at what is now the Brooklyn Comedy Collective. And they really did put an emphasis on like writing weird plays and putting them up. And so, as opposed to just like normal stand up or even characters or anything like that. Like they liked a full story, a full narrative. So I did a couple of those. I did this one really fun, wrote this one really fun show with my like close friend and collaborator Ian Lockwood called Baby Ian Falls Down a Well. That was sort of about the like baby Jessica phenomenon of her falling down a well, but it happens to an adult man.
Uh-huh.
And it took place in a stairwell, and that was really fun. And yeah, and then I did a few others, and then, but always with other people, and sometimes for like a massive, massive cast. Um, and then I decided I wanted to write one for just me, sort of coming at the same time that I was like, I really want to make like my hour of material and show people what I can do. But I'm not really like a traditional stand up. So it wasn't about just like stringing together a bunch of material. It was about like writing a whole new show
Hmm.
using sort of like the muscles and the on the onstage attitude that I've adopted. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the show is autobiographical seemingly, and you are playing either yourself or a heightened version of yourself on stage, but it has there's some surreal aspects of breaking into song and stuff like that. When did you decide that you wanted to like go that route as opposed to like a more absurdist like falling down a well sort of thing? And when were you worried at
Yeah.
all about telling a a very personal story on stage and
Um, yeah, I had done Absurdist in the past, and I actually think my inclination is towards the more grounded, but because I'm in a scene that like the Brooklyn alt scene so like prizes what is like avant-garde and like super super strange. And so I had like stretched myself to do that, but I think my personal inclination is to write stories that feel a little closer to home. I have never hooked up with my cousin. And the so the idea did come from like pure fiction, even though it's about a girl who experiences like two close family deaths And so I did experience that, but like the idea of girl hooking up with her cousin, that just came from my brain. And then once I was starting to fill it in and realize it took place as like at like these two funerals of two shivas, and of course the experience that I have with those, it is Jewish, it is personal. I was trying, just as I was, yeah, basically as I was like filling in the narrative, it felt the easiest to draw from my own life. Um, and so I did. I like that people get confused. I like that people think all of it is real. I would say like 65% of it is real. Other parts are exaggerated. Other parts are totally made up. My
Okay.
producer told me that I seem nicer and like a like a tamer version of myself in the first half of the show.
Okay, well you fooled me because I did think you hooked up with your cousin. So
I
it
know.
was so I bought into the illusion you created on stage. Okay. So major themes of the show are like sex and love, death, and Judaism.
Mhm.
Um which are eternal themes, I guess. Okay, well, so our real life is part of it was both your grandparents passing away like within the span of a month. Um
Yeah, for me it was 7 weeks, and in the show it's 3 weeks.
okay.
Yeah.
Um how did you decide to use that detail and that sad sad series of events? Like how did that lead to a comedic premise?
Yeah, so I was like we went to this funeral for my grandfather, and he died unexpectedly. He was sick, he was in a home. And it was kind of nice. We saw all these people that we hadn't seen. My grandparents didn't live in New York, so we like traveled. We saw these people we hadn't seen in a long time. It was almost like a nice family reunion and a celebration of his life. And that was like really nice. And even though it was sad. And then my grandmother died very unexpectedly. She was 9 years younger than my grandfather. So we didn't we thought we had a good 5 more years with
Oh
her.
wow, yeah.
And and then we had to do the whole thing all over again, like same funeral home, same place for the Shiva, same people were invited. My aunt got a text, which I thought was so funny from like a coworker, like her husband's coworker, which was he said, "What the fuck is going on with your family?" Which is like just kind of how it felt. It was like, "Wait, what the fuck is going on with our family?" And my mom would be like, "Oh my god, I'm an orphan now. Like I wasn't 2 months ago, now I'm just
Yeah.
no parent." So I think that was sad and shocking. I didn't really um and what I, after I had sort of like processed my grief, I walked away with this I holding on to the idea that the two consecutive funerals was like the most sort of humorous part, just because it was so unexpected, and because I was like, "Oh my god, there are so many families that must do this," but I've never heard someone be like, "Yeah, we had to order the same Shiva order again," and the big and the guy at the counter was probably like, "Really? You need like 200 bagels again, like 3 weeks later?" And so I was thinking about, what would happen at funeral number 1, where someone would have to deal with unexpected consequences at funeral number 2, and that's why I thought of a girl, like, hooking up with a family member who she thought she wasn't gonna see again. But I didn't really wanna write that much about, like so much about, like, grief, because I didn't feel like I had anything new to say about it.
Mhm.
It's sad. It sucks. Yeah.
um so how did you know maybe incest big taboo like how did you decide to to integrate that into a more grounded reality?
Yeah, well, um, it's funny. Yeah, I think it could have taken a bunch of different directions, this premise, girl hooks up with her cousin. And as soon as I started to really think about the show beyond like the log line or even like this, the act one, act two beats of like, she's at the funeral, she goes home, she goes to the second funeral, she resolves it. I started to think about like the themes that I wanted to explore in my life, or just like emotions that I felt like were prevalent, which were about basically like growing up and long-term love and um, you know, finding someone that you want to commit to, finding someone that you want to die 3 weeks after, that kind of stuff. And especially, I'm 29 years old, and I have a lot of friends who just turned 30 who are thinking about sort of the same things. Um, and as our whatever, as we're supposed to be like more adults in our lives or something. And so then I was kind of like, oh, I think she has to have a boyfriend. Like, I think she has to have this relationship at home that she can compare to this exciting new relationship. And that new relationship happens to be her cousin who's in the IDF, which would never work. But she's sort of treating it as these like two equal options for am I gonna do the safe, maybe boring thing of staying with my boyfriend, or am I gonna do the crazy impulsive thing like I've been known to do and try and get my cousin to fall in love with me and move to Israel?
Right. Okay. So in some ways, it's a like classic rom-com setup
Yes.
of a boring guy and a more exciting guy,
Yes.
but the more exciting guy, yeah, violates this taboo and seems totally like, it could never work out in any like uh in any way real life. Okay, but we won't reveal what
Whatever she chooses. Yeah.
what ultimately happens. But okay. So another theme in the show is sort of like you're playing a version of yourself, you're seeing all these older relatives, and they're like, well, how's your career going? What's going on with comedy? And then there's a character who portrays your aunt or your great aunt
Yeah, my aunt. Yeah.
who is very obsessed with like sort of cancel culture and like the male comedians who have been taken down by sexual harassment and assault allegations. Why did you how did that theme enter into the idea?
Okay, so that character was actually the one character that I have done outside of the show that I had done prior to writing it.
Okay.
So almost the entire thing is new, but that character was something that I'd been doing for years. Which is like, yeah, basically like your aunt who's like, but tell me the deal about Louis C.K. Why do we hate him again? And it is, I mean, it worked because I do have cousins who love to talk to me about they like to get me riled up about why I don't like support, Louis C.K. anymore. Um, they're also, and I love these cousins, but they listen to like Howard Stern and Joe Rogan. We just have different takes. And I do
Uh-huh.
think that that is a lot of people's touch points for like what's going on in comedy right now. Because it is in like the newspapers that they read. So I thought it also made sense to put there. But yeah, it was just like a bit that I knew I could. If everything else in the show sucked, I feel like at least people will laugh at this because it's gotten a good response before.
Right. And I assume that you were talking about Dave Chappelle before he like
Yeah.
had his SNL opening act or whatever that or his monologue rather that I actually didn't watch it because I'm so sick of Chappelle, but I guess he
Yeah. I tried not to watch it because I didn't want to be asked about it in any of these interviews. But
Okay, well, yeah, I don't want to go into it, but it is, yeah, it's
no, I'll tell you, I wrote it before because I wrote it when he was saying like, really harmful stuff to the trans community and being written about in the same publications. And then I texted my friend Zach, who produces my show, and I was like, oh my God, he said some like I didn't even watch it at that point. I was like, people are saying he said some anti-Semitic stuff, but in the bit, she thinks that he's Jewish. And then he was like, no, it'll be fine. It's a gift. And so then I just sort of like added a couple like knowing things there. And it
Okay.
ended up it was great because I was like, yeah, it stays relevant. But
well,
yes,
how do
I
you
did
think
that.
about like violating a taboo is part of the show, hook up with your cousin,
Mhm.
and then you know comedians go tiptoe up to taboos or talk up or violate taboos in various ways, and then maybe there's a backlash to some of them. I mean, Chappelle has gotten a backlash, but he got to host SNL after he stirred up controversy,
Yeah.
making fun of trans people. Or I like I said, I've stopped paying attention to him because I was just like over it. But But yeah, how do you?
Which is powerful, which is, like, probably what we're supposed to do. Be like, "You know what? This is not worth the trouble. I'm not gonna watch."
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
how do you think about taboo, like crossing taboos in comedy? And yeah, there has been a cultural change over the past 5 or 10 years where if you watch a stand-up special from 15 years ago, you might be like, oh, how did they get away with this and no one no one objected at the
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. I mean, I watch, like, my favorite shows, Scrubs or That '70s Show, and they're making, yeah, horrible jokes about, like, everyone, that would no longer stand today. But I think so Anthony Jeselnik, who is this comic who I love, it's funny because we have I think very different styles, but he says this thing where he's like, asking comedians to, or comedians asking to like perform without the sort of woke expectations of like a new crowd is like football players asking to play football without the ball. Like it's an inherent part of like how we do our job is how to tiptoe up to that edge, but not cross it, how to joke about something, but not make people cringe or like feel mad or uncomfortable. And so we wouldn't be able to do it if there weren't these sort of agreed upon, you know, um, norms, I guess, for what it's about to say. And they do shift. And so then we're supposed to shift. And I think like that is should be a fun challenge for anyone who is a good comic. Now you can like find a different audience, but if you want to be like Dave Chappelle and you want to be lauded by, the sort of critics that we're talking about and doing the kind of sets on shows that we're talking about, then like, yeah, you adjust. And he's good enough that I don't think he has to talk about stuff that runs the risk of not being funny and just being harmful. I feel lucky because I went to Oberlin. So I'm like, I have already been on an improv group where we had to be really careful about making jokes about like having sex with animals because it like offended someone one time. You know what I mean? Like I feel very trained in that and actually feel a bit freer outside of what was normal for Oberlin audiences to hear as opposed to like a New York audience. But
Mhm.
if it changes, and it will, if someone says your incest show is actually really harmful to victims of incest, hopefully that won't happen until we're done running the show. But like, I have to take it into consideration.
Okay, and it's weird how so many of these woke versus anti-woke and like the crude term like debates end up centering around stand-up comedy. That
Yeah.
is somewhat strange, and maybe as part of it has to do with like a stand-up comedian can't be fired exactly because they're sort of like an independent agent and they can always just find a
Yeah.
different audience or different like venue to play. So like you can't complain to the manager of comedy like in the way that like Kevin Spacey has been iced out of Hollywood because there's only so many movie studios, but like there'll always be like any backlash like generates its own audience or
Yeah.
something. But what if but okay, let's say that there could be, you could imagine the Victims of Incest Association protesting your show. You could imagine the Cousin Lovers of America or of Israel,
Yeah. Well,
protesting your show.
I had someone call me an anti-Zionist bitch when I did a part of the show,
Okay.
because I just mentioned what If Not Now was.
Okay, yeah. So in the show, the
Yeah.
character's boyfriend works or has worked for, if not now, this Jewish like leftist peace organization. It's sort of like I don't know where I'm going with this, but whenever there's some sort of like backlash, I don't know. A lot of comedians seem to be like they figured out that if they say something offensive, they're going to piss some people off, and some people are going to be turned off. But then it's going to create a media backlash, and then they get attention, and then they could like ride that in a different direction. Like,
Yeah.
and that seems to be like if Chappelle is canny, that seems to be what he's. I mean, he's obviously very smart and funny, but that seems to be what he's sort of doing is
Right.
provoking
Right.
the libs, and then
Yeah.
people get mad, and more people are talking about Dave Chappelle. Whereas like 8 or so years ago, like I mean, he left his show and then he didn't really do anything for a long time, so he was out of the conversation for a long time. And now he's like, if I piss people off in various ways, then my career is revived. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's a question, but what do you think about that?
What do I think about that? Well, it's definitely not my strategy. First of all, I play for a liberal audience. Like that is currently like that is just my sense of humor or a leftist audience even. Like it's just it's my politics. Like it's so I don't think I'm trying to piss those people off. And I like to shock a little bit. Like, I like to be provocative, but I don't I don't know. I think Chappelle's also able to get away with it because people know that he was so good. So then you have a lot of supporters being like, "How can you go after Chappelle? Like, look at all this great stuff he did. Like, look at how good he continues to be." I don't have that kind of um catalog yet. So
Right.
maybe when I'm 50 and the kids are coming after me, I'm gonna be like, "Fuck you guys. My supporters will stay with me forever." But like I'm just not at that point in my career, so I can't do that. And then in terms of what Chappelle is doing, I mean, I don't know. It's like I I was okay, I did watch the monologue. I watched it with my mother actually. And we were both kind of prepared to be like people are overreacting because I think Jews always like to be like people are overreacting about it. Well, the kind of Jews that I surround myself with like to be like people are overreacting about anti-Semitism.
Uh-huh.
Unless there's a swastika on my front door, it's not anti-Semitism. It's kind of like some of the pervasive, which, whatever. I mean, I will say, I do not feel like physically threatened as a Jew in New York City. So my mom and I were watching it together. We thought a lot of it was funny. We thought some of it, yes, up against the envelope, but still kind of funny. And then there was like one part where he was like, but Jewish people, it's not black people's fault. Like anti-Semitism isn't black people's fault. And me and my mom were like, "Who's saying that?" We were like, "We're not saying that. I don't
Hmm.
think Jewish people are saying that." And also, to pit us against each other when our oppression is wrapped up in each other's oppression, it's like we're all victims of, white supremacy and the patriarchy. And it's like, that just seems like, why do you have to say that? But there are parts of it that I thought was fine. So that's how I feel about Chappelle.
Okay.
Parts of it are fine.
Okay, and what so but I could also see some people getting mad that like there's a character in the show, an Israeli IDF soldier who is well, he also violates this taboo against incest. The main character gets a huge crush on him, and I can imagine someone saying, "This is Zionist propaganda that a soldier for the IDF is presented as, an object of eroticism or something." Like, okay, but so why did you decide if since this was not a real incident, why did you decide that the cousin was Israeli and a soldier and
Yeah,
bringing
well,
Zionism, a obviously touchy subject for a lot of people,
yes.
into the show?
Yes. So, hot Israeli cousin felt like it lived in the world of this show, and I was like, "I'm gonna get to do a funny accent that I can do, that no one's gonna yell at me for doing."
Uh-huh.
So, and then the IDF stuff, I think, again, most of it is honestly from a humor perspective. Like, I was like, it's funny that she's so turned on by all the wrong parts of like what it's like to be a soldier. Like she really romanticizes basically how traumatized he is. And how like how much PTSD he probably has. Um and I actually I had just I'm trying to remember if I've said this in other interviews or not, but if it's been published. But I like went to Nashville when I was sort of like thinking about writing the show, and I met someone who had served in Afghanistan, and he and I was like really like I asked him if he had killed people, and my friend was like, "You're not supposed to ask that, Sophie," but I was like really like yeah, I was just like he was such a mystery to me because I never met anyone like that too. Like growing
Mhm.
up in New York, I did not have friends who then went off to serve. So I just thought it would be kind of funny. And I do think that I put enough in the show that makes it clear, even though my character is kind of an idiot about the whole thing, it makes it clear that, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, I'm not totally on board with Israel,
Mhm.
um, my occupation. But I did get in trouble for that after a show one time. And that kind of shook me. Because I didn't even say I was like, I'm really trying to toe the line. Like I'm not trying to say anything substantial about the occupation, although calling it the occupation some people disagree with that.
Right. No, it's there's people who are ready to get mad at you, whatever stance you have on Israel Palestine.
I was like, I'm Jewish. I go to synagogue. Like we are the same. Like respect my Jews. I do not hate the Jews.
Okay, so it's a one woman show, although there's some audience interaction, and you are on stage the whole time. And there's, without giving maybe too much away, there's a part of the show where like you do a costume change and
Mhm,
like you're exposed on stage in a way that like somewhat
mhm.
surprised me. Like, oh, she's really going for it here. Like, how did you think
Yeah.
about that? And yeah, I mean, I want to be like, oh, it was so brave, but like, I was like, we're in this like sort of small theater, and you're the only one on stage, and
Yeah.
yeah, how did you think about like doing that?
Brave, that's what they say. So, women who they think are ugly, they're like, "Oh, it's so brave that you showed that." I'm
Right.
just
So
kidding. No.
I'm definitely not saying that.
I'm kidding. Um, when I was thinking of the show, it like comes to me in bits and pieces, themes, certain titles of songs. It'll just like come to me. And one of the things that came to me where I was like, I want to be pretty naked on stage. It was just like I thought it would be really funny to be dressed super slutty at a funeral. And in like the movie version of this, she's just wearing like a really short dress. But because this was more of like it could be like her fantasy. So she could be wearing this like really revealing thing. And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. I'm in my 20s. I'm not going to want to show my body off this much for that much longer. People ask me how I do it in front of my parents, and my parents have been coming to my shows for years and years and years and years, and I just don't even think about it anymore. I can't. I'm on stage. I'm lost in the craft. But yeah, it's actually okay. I'll tell you this. I was at a nude dinner party last night that I
Okay.
found about that it yeah, I found out about it through Instagram. And I went and it was just like a community of naked people eating dinner and talking about our relationship with nudity. And as I was vocalizing it, I realized if you couldn't already tell by me signing up to do like partake in a nude dinner party with strangers, I was like, I'm very comfortable with nudity. I think it's shocking to other people, which I love, but I myself don't feel, yeah, really, I like almost don't give it a second thought. So, yeah.
So I first found you on Twitter, and maybe it's because there were you're part of a comedy group, and I'd seen some of your skits. I don't remember exactly how I started following you, but so
I
you do
remember.
sketch, and you also are an actor. How do you
Mhm.
like how does like a modern, I don't know, like how are you envisioning your career? Like there's people who are like doing everything. There's people who are like only doing stand up. Like, do you have what do you what do you think? Like, would you want to be on SNL or do something like that, or do you want to
Mm,
primarily act? Do you want to keep doing live comedy in New
what I
York?
want, the people that I look at as examples of what I want to do, Rachel Bloom is a big one, which is funny because I also think we have sort of like a similar comedic sensibility.
So she's
But
Crazy Ex Girlfriend, the star and creator of that.
yeah, yes, she created it, stars in other shows, creates other shows, continues to perform live. She does it all, and she's like really everyone knows what her voice is and trusts her to do all sides of the process. Like we trust her project from Rachel Bloom, and we trust her in this role. And I believe that she got famous because she was starring in her own show. So she got famous by like being very visible as a face. And that's like what I want to do too. Phoebe Waller Bridge is sort of close to that too. Like I think could do either started out with a live show that she, took to the fringe, which is what Sophie Sucks Face will do. Doesn't perform live.
The star of God, the name just went out of my head.
Fleabag.
Fleabag, yes.
Yeah. And like other shows crashing and stuff that preceded it. But Fleabag was like the big breakthrough, at least in the US. And so she's another one. Abby Jacobson is kind of like that, does both. Bo Burnham is like that, does both and makes musical hours. So I want to do it all. I'm focused. I really want to do it all. I'm very focused on acting and getting, that facial recognition right now. But yeah, it's hard. I don't like to put myself in a box, which is increasingly hard in an industry that like really wants everyone to have like a very specific brand and a very specific thing.
Right. No, that makes sense. And okay, so the show is it going to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh?
In Edinburgh, yeah, I mean that's what we are like in that process right now. But
Okay.
yeah, that's where.
Okay, cool. That's great. Do you see this like would you want to take the Fleabag route of turning like you could see this turning into a screen experience
Yeah,
in some way?
yeah. I think movie is probably the route, just because it really hinges around this like one dramatic event. Uh, but yeah, and I have, I'm already working on it. I have my outline. I'm doing my meetings and whatever. But yeah, that I think that would be really fun. I think a movie musical would be so fun. Because it's a musical. And I'm like, when have we had an original one of those recently? Feels like not in a while.
That's a good
They're
point.
all
I mean,
adaptations.
yeah, I mean, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend had these musical theater elements in each
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, a movie, I don't know, what was that stupid movie that took place in Los Angeles with Ryan Gosling?
Oh, La La Land.
Yeah, La La Land. Was
Yeah.
that maybe the last original like
Probably. Yeah, I'm trying to make La La Land.
yeah, La La
Yeah.
Land, but Jewish for the new generation. As someone who like is a fan of comedy and consuming comedy, like what are things that you mentioned some of your career role models, but like what are some of the things that you're like checking out these days in the world of comedy
In
that you've
comedy.
enjoyed?
Um, so funny because whenever anyone asks me what TV shows I watch, I'm like, it's just Real Housewives. And I will
Hmm.
say there's nothing funnier than the old seasons of Real Housewives of New York. But in terms of like the comedy that is really exciting to me right now, obviously I love every single person in Ladies Who Ranch, what they're doing in New York. It's Caroline Yost, Maya Sharma, Caitlin Blake, Kelly Cooper. You'll have to see them live because most of that stuff is not online, but it's like always just like boundary pushing meta comedy that just like makes me crack up. Um, I really like Simple Town, that group that is my peers. They make like really funny sketches, weird sketches is
Hmm.
how I would describe them online. I love this TikToker, Jake Krantz, who
I know nothing about TikTok.
okay, I watch a lot of TikTok. I lurk, so nobody try and find me. But I'm just lurking on TikTok. But Jake Krantz does. I was trying to describe it to my boyfriend the other day, and I did a horrible job. So I'm sure I'll do a horrible job again. But he just like takes these sort of little interactions, like a waiter saying to you like, "Have a nice lunch," and you saying, "Oh, you too," and then like taking that interaction to like its ultimate conclusion, where like you're eating, then you're following the waiter, like having his lunch and following him home and being like, I'm telling his wife I had a real nice lunch or stuff like that. He just does these really funny things, and he always sets it to like some like mid 2000s like club banger. I don't know what it is. It feels very fresh, and I love his stuff. I think the stuff that I watch is pretty different from the stuff that I make because I don't. When I watch something that's similar, I'm like, oh, it's not relaxing. So then I like, you know,
Okay,
pivot.
that makes sense. Like the cobbler doesn't want to look at shoes
Exactly. Exactly.
when he gets home. Do you I assume you at least know, but know of Catherine Cohen and Pat Regan and their podcast E
Yeah.
Treatment?
Yeah.
Yeah, you remind me a little bit of Catherine Cohen and just like the singing comedy, but also singing and performing. And um, the main thing that they talk about on their show is like Real Housewives stuff
Yeah.
because
Right. I know.
Pat is obsessed with Real Housewives. That's how I
I
learned
know.
most of what's happening in Real Housewives world is listening to Seek Treatment.
Yeah. No, I love Kat. She is a friend of mine. I feel like I like came onto the scene and was like watching her perform. Like she was in that group of people that I was like idolizing when I like first moved to New York. And I think she's so funny, and I definitely take some inspiration from that. I don't know Pat as well, but he's so funny too. And it is like there is this thing with people I think who work in TV, around TV, whatever it is like, especially if we work in scripted TV, which like I do, we can all we watch is reality because you don't want to be watching a show where you're like, oh, I auditioned for that, or I interviewed to write for that, or like, oh my God, that's my favorite actor. Like, I just want to be exactly like her. And so we watch a, a lot of Real Housewives, a lot of Love Island, um, basically, yeah, I'm still on The Bachelor. I don't know. I'm like the last person in the world to be watching it, but it's you me. But yeah, I think that's you'll find that's pretty common. Um, I don't know.
Okay, let's see. I don't know if I have any other questions, but do you want to? Okay, so like, if people want to see the show or learn more about the show, how can they do so?
You have to follow me on Instagram, unfortunately, or Twitter. I'm Sophie Zucker. You'll find me. Um, and it will be in LA on February 1st at Dynasty Typewriter. That's the next performance. We haven't started publicizing that because we just finished this run, but we will soon. And then it'll be back in New York at various places also in like February, March, April. Yeah, we're gonna do it a million times, but you have to follow me. And I post other stuff too, so
Okay, I follow you on Twitter. I failed to follow you on Instagram, but I will do so. And you're entertaining on Twitter, and the show was great. Sophie Sucks Face. Um, Anything else you want to mention or promote or say before before we wrap up?
no, I think we did it.
Okay, and say your the handle one more time, and it will also be linked in like the show notes.
Okay, great. So on Twitter, I'm Sophie R. Zucker. And on Instagram, I'm String Cheese Zucker.
Okay.
But if you type in Sophie, I'll also pop up. And a friend who works with influencers told me that I have to change it, but I don't feel like doing that just yet. So it's String Cheese for now.
Okay, yeah, you need a unified brand if you.
She was like, people need to know it's you. Like, you need to have your name. I was like, they'll know it's me. They'll know.
Okay, and I'm on Twitter. As Twitter still exists as of this taping. And comedy is legal on Twitter now, which is sort of exciting
I
for
know, right?
all of us fans of comedy. So I'm on there, Aryeh for now. And Sophie, thank you for coming on, and
Yeah, thank you
thanks
for having me.
and congratulations on the success of the show. And I hope it becomes a movie someday, so I can go see it and say, oh, I saw that. I saw that in a small theater in New York City.
You and me both.
Okay, and thanks to all the listeners out there who can, you can rate, you can review, you can tell a friend, or do whatever you want, and we'll see you again next time.